The village of Bondoukoui lay wrapped in darkness, the kind of complete darkness only found in rural Burkina Faso before dawn. A small boy of 8 years sat awake in his family's modest mud-brick home while his siblings slept nearby. Ibrahim's fingers traced the wooden figure his grandfather had carved for him. A lion with a broken paw, its eyes two small pieces of polished quartz that caught even the faintest light. "This is no ordinary lion," his grandfather had told him before passing away. "See how it stands, despite its broken paw? Remember this, Ibrahim. The lion with the broken paw is the most dangerous. When a lion knows pain, it also knows strength." His mother stirred in her sleep, worry lines visible even in slumber. For 3 days, she had moved mechanically through her tasks, her eyes constantly drifting to the path leading from the village. "Your father has gone to find work in the mines," she had told him, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying something else. Ibrahim wasn't supposed to hear the whispers between his mother and aunt. Men from a foreign company had taken his father, the same men who wanted their village's land. Ibrahim's shoulders tensed as he caught sight of torchlights approaching through a crack in the wall. His heart pounded against his ribs as he watched their slow advance. He clutched the wooden lion tighter and made a decision that would change everything. Slipping the lion into his pocket, he moved silently across the floor, careful not to wake anyone. The cool night air touched his skin as he ducked through the doorway and into the shadows. The village was laid out in a pattern as old as memory. Circular family compounds connected by narrow footpaths. Ibrahim knew every hiding spot, every passage. He moved like a small ghost, staying where shadows were thickest. Crouching behind the grain storage hut at the village's edge, he watched as 5 men in expensive boots and foreign clothes stood with the village chief beneath the ancient baobab tree. "You have 1 week," said a tall man with a French accent, his crisp white shirt glowing in the torchlight. "Either convince them to leave, or we will make them leave." The chief's voice trembled, but his back remained straight. "These are ancestral lands. The spirits of our fathers dwell here. The people will not go." The Frenchman's laugh cut through the darkness. "Ancestral lands? Spirits? This is business, old man. Your government has already signed the papers. This land belongs to the Crimson Mining Corporation now." A second man, shorter but broad-shouldered, spoke in a lower voice. "The operation begins next month. Those who cooperate will be compensated. Those who resist—" He left the threat unfinished, his hand resting meaningfully on the pistol visible beneath his jacket. Ibrahim's young fingers dug into the dry soil beside him. These were the men who took his father. These were the men threatening his home, the only world he had ever known. As the meeting ended and the men turned to leave, Ibrahim faced a choice. The safe path led back to his bed, to wait and hope like everyone else. The other path. Without fully understanding what drove him, the small boy began to follow the men. He stayed well back, using every shadow and bush for cover. Years of playing hunt games with village children had taught him how to move silently, how to remain unseen. The night air grew cooler as they left the village behind. 3 kilometers through scrubland and sparse forest, the path gradually widening into a dirt road. Twice he nearly lost them when they rounded bends, and once he froze as the group paused, forcing him to crouch motionless in tall grass while insects crawled over his ankles. Finally, the men reached their destination, a fenced compound hidden in a small valley. Modern tents with aluminum frames stood in ordered rows, their white canvas walls glowing from lights within. A large satellite dish pointed skyward. Around the perimeter, guards with rifles paced at measured intervals. Ibrahim retreated to a small hillock overlooking the camp. From there, hidden among rocks and sparse vegetation, he watched. Hours crawled by. His legs cramped, hunger gnawed at his belly, and thirst made his tongue feel swollen. Still, he watched. The camp followed rhythms. Guards changed positions every 2 hours. Lights in some tents went out while others came on. Near dawn, when the eastern sky had just begun to lighten, he saw his opportunity. The guard nearest to him, a heavy-set man with drooping eyelids, was being relieved by another who stopped to light a cigarette. Both men's attention turned away from the section of fence directly below Ibrahim's position. The boy's heart hammered so loudly he feared it would give him away. His wooden lion pressed against his thigh through his pocket, one deep breath, then another. He slid down the hillside and wriggled under a loose section of fence, feeling the wire scratch his back through his thin shirt. Inside, he darted from shadow to shadow, using the tents themselves as cover. Voices from inside one made him freeze, pressing his back against canvas, while men discussed equipment just centimeters away. His legs trembled, but he forced himself toward the largest tent at the camp's center. Inside, electric lanterns cast harsh white light over folding tables covered with papers. Maps of his village and surrounding area were marked with red X's. Lists of names, his father's among them, labeled troublemakers. And photographs. Photographs of men being loaded into trucks, some with bruised faces. In one image, Ibrahim recognized his father, standing with his hands bound as a guard pushed him forward. A surge of anger gave him focus. His small hands trembled as he took a black notebook with handwritten plans and the corporate logo from the table. Ibrahim couldn't read all the French words inside, but he recognized numbers, dates, and names of villages. This was evidence of something wrong, something adults with power would understand. His fingers had just closed around the notebook when a voice behind him turned his blood to ice. "What do we have here? A little spy?" The Frenchman from the village meeting blocked the tent's entrance, his tall frame silhouetted against the canvas. The first rays of dawn illuminated half his face. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Ibrahim's mouth went dry. His legs felt rooted to the ground. But as the man took a step forward, something unexpected happened inside the boy. The wooden lion pressed against his side, and suddenly the fear simply vanished. In its place came a clarity so sharp it was almost painful. Ibrahim looked directly into the man's eyes. "I know what you did to my father." The Frenchman's smile faltered, genuine surprise crossing his features. "You're Diallo's boy." Ibrahim stood straighter. "Where is he?" The man's smile returned, colder now. "Clever little rat. But too bad no one will believe a child." "They will believe this," Ibrahim said, holding up the notebook with its damning contents. Something changed in the Frenchman's expression. A flicker of uncertainty, quickly masked by anger. "You should have stayed in your hut with your mother," he snarled, lunging forward. Ibrahim ducked under the man's arm, feeling fingers brush his shirt but fail to grasp it. But instead of racing for the exit, he did something unexpected. He ran deeper into the camp, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Intruder! Intruder in the camp! Help!" The effect was instantaneous. Guards scrambled from their posts, weapons ready. Lights flashed on. Men emerged half-dressed, searching for external danger. No one thought to look for a small boy moving against the flow, slipping between tents. The Frenchman's voice rose above the commotion. "The boy! Stop the boy with the notebook!" But it was too late. Ibrahim had already reached the fence. This time, with adrenaline coursing through him, he scaled it, ignoring the bite of wire against his palms. He dropped to the ground on the other side and ran, not back toward his village where they would look for him, but east toward his uncle's village. Behind him, the camp erupted in frantic activity. Flashlight beams cut through the lingering darkness. Men shouted orders. A vehicle engine roared to life, but Ibrahim had disappeared into the landscape he knew by heart. The eastern sky had bloomed into full daylight when Ibrahim reached his uncle's village. His legs were scratched from thorns, his feet bleeding from stones, his throat parched beyond words. But the notebook remained secure. His uncle, Ousmane Diallo, was a respected elder with connections in the capital. Unlike many, he could read French, a skill he had often used to help villagers understand government documents. When Ibrahim collapsed at his feet, wordlessly extending the notebook, his uncle caught him before he fell. Between gulps of water, the boy told his story. At first, his uncle's face showed disbelief, then concern, and finally, as he paged through the notebook, a cold anger. "These men," Ousmane whispered. "They think themselves above all law." The evidence revealed far more than just his father's location. It exposed an illegal mining operation that had bribed officials to seize land across the region. Names, dates, payment amounts, all carefully documented. Most damning were the evacuation protocols, plans to forcibly remove villagers who refused to leave. Usman's trading journey was forgotten. Instead, he made a different journey, to Ouagadougou, where he had a cousin who worked as a clerk in the Ministry of Justice. The cousin knew an honest magistrate who couldn't be bribed. Within days, the evidence reached people who couldn't be silenced. Within weeks, investigations began. Mining company executives were arrested, corrupt officials exposed, and Ibrahim's father returned home, thinner and with new lines etched into his face, but alive. 12 other men from surrounding villages who had been held in an illegal detention facility returned with him. That night, as his father held him close, Ibrahim felt tears soaking into his hair. "You did something grown men were afraid to do," his father whispered. "But how? How were you not afraid when you faced that man alone?" Ibrahim pulled out his wooden lion with the broken paw. "Grandfather said the lion who knows pain knows strength. I felt the pain when they took you. That gave me strength." His father studied him for a long moment. "There is something in you, Ibrahim. Something rare. A heart that refuses fear when it matters most." Years passed. As Ibrahim grew, those who knew him noticed something different. When older boys bullied younger children, it was Ibrahim who stepped between them. When a traveling merchant tried to cheat an elderly widow, it was Ibrahim who called out the deception. He excelled at school, his teachers noting his unusual ability to remain calm during conflicts. One teacher, a former military officer, recommended him for a scholarship to a school in the capital. No one could have predicted where that path would lead him. From village school to military academy, from junior officer to rising leader. Through it all, Ibrahim Traoré carried that same unflinching clarity he'd found as a child, the ability to look powerful men in the eye and show no fear. Now, 26 years after that night in Bondoukoui, Ibrahim Traoré sat across from the French ambassador in the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. The ambassador's face had reddened during their conversation, his voice rising with each word. "President Traoré, you cannot simply cancel contracts signed by previous administrations. These mining rights were legally obtained. My government will not stand for this theft." Traoré listened without interruption, his expression unchanged. When the ambassador finished, Traoré opened his desk drawer and placed something on the table between them, the wooden lion with the broken paw. The ambassador looked confused. "What is this supposed to mean?" "This lion has witnessed greater threats than diplomatic posturing," Traoré said quietly. "Your predecessors took my father when I was 8 years old. They took our land. They thought no one would stand against them because they had money and power." He leaned forward slightly. "I was not afraid of them then. I am not afraid of you now." The blood drained from the ambassador's face. That was 30 years ago. Different people. Different circumstances. Same companies, Traoré replied, sliding a folder across the desk. Same exploitation, but not the same outcome. The folder contained evidence that the mining companies had falsified environmental reports, bribed officials, and violated dozens of regulations. The investigations had been conducted quietly over months. "Your government has 24 hours to recall these companies, or face international exposure," Traoré said. "This time, it won't be an 8-year-old boy bringing evidence to light. It will be a sovereign nation reclaiming its dignity." After the ambassador left, Traoré's chief of staff entered with a concerned expression. "Sir, challenging France so directly could have serious repercussions for our economy, for international aid." Traoré picked up the wooden lion, his thumb tracing the broken paw. "There is a difference between recklessness and fearlessness," he said. "I'm not acting without consideration for the consequences. I simply refuse to let fear of those consequences determine our nation's fate." The chief of staff nodded slowly. "The people are with you, Mr. President, but few understand where this courage comes from." Traoré's eyes moved to the window, to the country he had sworn to protect. "It comes from a night long ago, when a boy realized that those who appear most powerful are often built on foundations of lies and exploitation. Once you see that truth, you can never unsee it." 3 days passed with no response from France. On the fourth morning, news broke across international media. The French companies were withdrawing from Burkina Faso. The government began negotiations with diverse international partners, deals structured to protect workers' rights, environmental standards, and return fair profits to the nation. When journalists asked how he had achieved what previous leaders could not, Traoré's answer was simple. Sometimes you need to see power through the eyes of a child to understand its true limitations. What the journalists didn't know was that Ibrahim Traoré had just approved a new rural education initiative focused on documenting village histories and traditional knowledge. The first community selected for the program, Bondokui. In homes across Burkina Faso today, families tell their children the legend of the boy who followed dangerous men into the night and returned with the truth that saved his father. Most believe it's just a folk tale meant to inspire courage. Few realize they're telling the origin story of their president. Ibrahim Traoré keeps the wooden lion with the broken paw on his desk, a reminder that true power doesn't come from titles or wealth or weapons. It comes from the moment when fear transforms into clarity and a single brave action changes everything.